If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe to the channel. And if you're enjoying these stories, there's a link below to buy me a cup of coffee. This is the Chassidic Story Project with Barak Hullman, podcasting from Jerusalem, Israel. This podcast is sponsored by listeners just like you. To become a supporter of this podcast, please go to HassidicStory.com. HASIDIC Story.com. You'll never know. You'll never know. You'll never know. You'll never know. Shalom Aleichem, my sweetest friends. I have to tell you the truth, I really missed putting out an episode last week. Even though I was spending time with family for Chanukah, I missed telling stories, and so it's my pleasure to be back and telling more stories this week. This week I have 3 stories for you. Now, some of you might say, oh, so now he's telling 3 stories every week? And the answer is maybe, because what happens if I only tell 2 stories or 1 story? But if I can, I'm going to make an effort to squeeze in another short story at the end. And so this week I have 3 stories for you, and they're 3 stories of the Heilige Baal Shem Tov. For some reason, people like Baal Shem Tov stories more than the other stories, even though I personally think the other stories are just as good, sometimes even better. However, you might ask, why 3 Baal Shem Tov stories right now? What's the special occasion? And the special occasion is that I'm putting together a book of stories of the Baal Shem Tov from the podcast, and I noticed that one of these stories was missing from the book, because apparently I hadn't recorded it yet. And so I'm recording it for the book, and another couple stories to add to the book as well. So before I begin, I want to dedicate this podcast episode to the continued success, Bezrat Hashem, of our soldiers in battle, wherever they are. May Hashem keep them safe and help them to be successful. The returning of all the hostages, whole, healthy, alive, Bezrat Hashem. The refuah shlema, the full recovery of everybody who is ill or has been injured. The comforting of those that lost loved ones, and the continued unity of the Jewish people here in the land of Israel and all around the world. Everybody knows, of course, that the Heilige Baal Shem Tov, what was one of his biggest mitzvot? Ve'ahavta l're'echa kamocha, that you should love your fellow Jew as yourself. And what was one of the goals of being a chassid? It was to refine yourself and to essentially be a mensch, to be a good person. And so the Baal Shem Tov taught his Chassidim to go out of their way to try not to hurt anyone's feelings and to be kind and smile. God forbid that you should be insensitive to your fellow Jew. Imagine a person that they put on 15 pairs of tefillin, but they disrespect a fellow Jew. They're not really holy. And so one Wednesday, the Heilige Baal Shem Tov says to his Chassidim, harness the horses, we're going for a ride. And he made sure to have a minion with him. And the Chassidim said, where are we going? He said, we're going someplace where we're going to spend Shabbos. And so, as everybody knows, the Baal Shem Tov's driver, Alexei, would face the Rebbe when he would drive, and the horses would take them where they needed to go. And the Chassidim and the Baal Shem Tov rode for many hours until they reached a little village where the horses stopped. And the Baal Shem Tov gets off the wagon, and the Chassidim are looking around. They're standing in front of a broken down house. The roof has a hole in it. The front door is broken, all the windows are broken, the floor is made out of dirt, and they saw it started raining, and the rain turned to snow, and the snow was coming in through the hole in the roof. But nonetheless, the sweet little Yiddele, he comes out, and he says, Shalom Aleichem, my sweetest friends. This must be the greatest honor I've ever had in my life. Would you please come in? And the Baal Shem Tov turns to his Chassidim and he says, listen, no matter what happens, no matter what you see or what you hear, you may not tell this man that I am the Baal Shem Tov. The Chassidim thought, okay, no problem. But now they knew something was going to happen. And as they're walking towards the house, the sweet poor Jew, he says to the Chassidim, you guys traveled from so far. Where are you from? And the Chassidim said, oh, we're from Mezhibuz. And the poor Jew says, Mezhibuz? Then you must know the Heilige Baal Shem Tov. And one of the Chassidim started nodding before another one gave him an elbow. Oh! And the Baal Shem Tov interrupted and said, why do we have to talk so much? Can't you see that we're starving? Don't you have anything for us to eat? Now the Chassidim were shocked. They knew this man was a kind person, but dirt poor. And how could the Baal Shem Tov speak with them in such a manner? But this poor Jew, without asking any questions, he runs into his house. And the Baal Shem Tov and his Chassidim follow after him. And they hear the poor Jew say to his wife, Chanale, we've been blessed with a great honor. We have 11 Jews here from Mezhibuz, and we have to offer them something to eat for dinner. She says to him, Moishele, we don't have anything. And Moishele says, we have milk from the cow, right? Chanale says, Moishele, please, the milk is for our children, and the little bread that we have left from Shabbos is for them as well. Moshe went into the kitchen, and he says, Chanale, I don't care. Our guests come first. And so Moishele and Chanale served the guests the bread and the milk. And the Chassidim knew very well that Moishele was taking food away from his own children, and they couldn't bring themselves to eat it. But the Baal Shem Tov, he laid back in his chair, and he ate everything off the table. Whatever the Chassidim didn't eat, the Baal Shem Tov stuffed into his mouth until every morsel was finished. And the Chassidim would never have imagined such a scene. They felt terrible for Moishele and Chanale, and they were kind of ashamed to be with the Baal Shem Tov. The next morning, the Baal Shem Tov wakes up early, and he says, hey, Moishele, where's breakfast? And again, Moishele and Chanale brought the milk and bread that they had saved for their children. And the Chassidim only took a little bit because Moishele insisted, but the Baal Shem Tov, he finished off everything on the table. And afterwards he said to Moishele, I'm really hungry. I need a real good meal tonight. Do you have any meat in the house? And Moishele runs into the kitchen, and he says to his wife, Chanale, we have to give a meat meal to the 11 Jews visiting for Meshibuz. And Chanale didn't have any more patience for this. She said, Moishele, please, the only meat we have is the cow. And obviously we're not going to shech the cow just to feed 11 strangers. Then we wouldn't even have milk for our children anymore. But Moishele says, we can and we will. These people are my guests, and I will feed them the cow. And so he went into the back and shechted the cow and prepared it for the Chassidim. And they had a huge barbecue. And the Chassidim ate a little bit of the cow. Moishele and his wife and their children, they ate a little bit. But the Baal Shem Tov, he finished everything that was left. It seemed humanly impossible that a person could eat so much meat. But by Friday morning, there was nothing left but the bones of that cow. And the Baal Shem Tov called out to Moishele, and he said, listen, Moishele, I'm going to give you the menu for Shabbos. Everybody knows that the food that we eat on Shabbos is more special than the food we eat during the week. And the Chassidim didn't know what Moishele was going to do because they knew he had nothing left. This man was so sweet and kind and so poor. And yet the Baal Shem Tov had the chutzpah to ask for a Shabbos menu, and none of the Chassidim knew what to do. They didn't understand why the Baal Shem Tov was treating this Jew in such a poor way. So the Baal Shem Tov says to Moishele, I'm going to need 12 challahs, 12 loaves of bread for Shabbos, and 3 types of wine, 2 types of fish, sweet and sour, and soup for each meal. Chicken is the main course, and of course dessert. And I expect this all to be bought and prepared by Shabbos. So Moishele goes into the kitchen, and he says, Chanale, what am I going to do? We have to give our guests something special for Shabbos. And Chanale says, listen, Moishele, you slaughtered the cow. You gave all of our scraps of bread. We don't have any milk. We don't have anything. I don't have any advice for you. And so Moishele says, okay, it's come to that moment. Chanale said, what are you talking about? He said, I'll have to sell the house. She said, what? Are you crazy? We have children. Where are we going to live? He said, we'll deal with that later. Right now, I'm going to sell the house to feed our guests. And Moishele went into the village and sold his house. And the house, wasn't worth very much. Really was just enough to buy all that food for Shabbos. And he made a deal with the local banker who bought the house that he could stay there until Monday night. So the Baal Shem Tov and his Chassidim knew that when they sat down for the Friday night meal, they were taking everything away from Moishele and his family. And the Chassidim couldn't bring themselves to eat. But the Baal Shem Tov, he started with the soup and went straight through the meal, drinking the wine, eating the fish, the chicken, even the dessert. The Chassidim could not understand what was going on. They looked at one another and they said, this is how our Rebbe behaves? Everything he taught us not to do, he's doing. And the same went for the other 2 meals on Shabbos. And the Malava Malka, the Baal Shem Tov, finished off pretty much everything. And the Chassidim could not wait to get out of there. They saw the pain on Moishele's wife and her concern. And Moishele, even though he put on a smile, was also very concerned about what was coming for him and his family. But the Baal Shem Tov actually went out of his way to make sure that he finished every crumb in the entire house. And by Sunday night, there was nothing left on the table or in the kitchen or anywhere. And the Chassidim felt so bad for this man and his family. The Baal Shem Tov had literally bankrupted them. He ate everything they owned. And then the Baal Shem Tov gave the signal. The Chassidim ran to the wagon. And the Baal Shem Tov followed behind them. He climbed up onto the wagon seat, and the Chassidim were looking at one another. And they say to one another, can you believe that he didn't even say thank you to Moshe and his family for all they did for us? And as the wagon pulled away, the Baal Shem Tov turned around and shouted to Moshe, Moshe, I want you to know that I am the Baal Shem Tov. And with that, they took off like the wind. All the way back to Mezhibuz, the Chassidim were practically crying. They were embarrassed to be Chassidim of the Baal Shem Tov. They couldn't believe that their Rebbe would treat a fellow Jew like this. They felt like they could never forgive the Baal Shem Tov for how he behaved that Shabbos. Now, in the meantime, Moshe is standing there in front of his house, and he says, tomorrow I have to move out, and I have no place to go. I have no food in the house. My family's starving. I have no money. I have no possessions. This time he wasn't going to go into the kitchen and ask Chanaleh, because Chanaleh wasn't speaking with him anymore. And so, what did Moshe do? He did what he did every time he had a problem that he couldn't figure out. He ran into the forest to sit down under his favorite tree and cry out to Hashem. He says, Ribono Shel Olam, Master of the universe, you gave me the great honor and mitzvah of having guests. And I slaughtered the cow, and I sold my house just to fulfill that mitzvah. But Hashem, now I have nothing. I'm being kicked out of my house. I have no money. I have no food. My wife won't even talk with me. You know, Hashem, if you want to abuse me, fine. I'm not a tzaddik. Maybe I deserve it. But my wife and children, they're innocent. Why should they suffer from my arrogance of wanting to do the mitzvah of having guests? You know, Moshe is sitting there under the tree in the forest. And people said to Rabbi Nachman, who recommended that people go out into the forest to meditate and speak with Hashem, called the Ditbodedut. People said to Rabbi Nachman, isn't it true that Hashem is the same everywhere? And Rabbi Nachman said, yes. So they would ask him, well, if that's true, how come you have to go into the forest to speak with Hashem? Can't you just speak with Hashem in the shul or your house? And Rabbi Nachman said, yes, of course. Hashem is the same everywhere, but I'm not. When I go into the forest, my soul expands, and I'm able to connect with Hashem in the way that I can't in shul and at home. And so too it was with Moshe. His davening started expanding like his soul. And he said, you know, Hashem, if I was rich, I could have as many guests on Shabbos as I wanted. I would invite everyone, and I wouldn't have to worry about how I would feed them. He said, you know, Hashem, if you would just give me the money, I would do so much in honor of the Holy Shabbos. I wouldn't just have hundreds of guests. I'd serve the finest food. I would make a free hostel for people to stay for Shabbos. I would go around to the poor people in my town and find out what help they needed, and I would give it to them quietly and secretly. Hashem, why do I have to be so poor all the time? And then he was about to get up and go back to his troubles that were waiting for him at home. But Moshe said, please, Hashem, I'm begging you, spare my family. It's because of my ego that I sold the house. They're innocent, Hashem. Please, you have to tell me what to do. I don't know what to do. And so Moshe started walking back home, and on his way he runs into Ivan, the city drunkard. And Ivan and Moshe were friends because nobody respected Ivan. He was drunk all the time. But Moshe was a good soul, and whenever he would see Ivan, he would ask him if he needed help. Sometimes he would help him clean up a bit, have a short conversation. Moshe was always nice to Ivan. And there he sees Ivan. He says, Moshe, I've been looking all over town for you. We have to talk. We have to talk right now. And Moshe says, okay, Ivan, what's going on? He said, have you seen how my children treat me? They abuse me. They treat me like a dog. And they say that I'm a drunk and good for nothing. Is that how children should speak with their father? What do you think? Is that how they should speak with me? They show me no respect. But you, Moshe, you're the only person who treats me like a real human being. And Moshe says, okay, Ivan, listen, I've got a lot of hardship going on right now. And Ivan said, really? What's going on? He said, never mind. I thought I was doing something good, but apparently I wasn't. So Ivan says, Moshe, I want to share a secret with you. I have a very important secret, only for you. Okay, what's the secret? It's true that I look like I'm a drunkard, right? And I'm poor, and I have nothing. And Moshe says, yeah. He said, well, it's all fake. I'm a very wealthy man. I have thousands and thousands of gold pieces buried in the forest, and I want to show you where I'm hiding them. Because if God forbid I die, I'm not giving it to my children. I'm giving it to you, Moshe. And at first, Moshe thought Ivan was just drunk. But he said, okay, fine, Ivan, come, let's go into the forest and show me where you hid your gold. and they walked deep into the forest, and there was a certain rock, and he moved the rock, and under it was a hole, and inside that hole was the treasure that Ivan had told him about. Ivan took out the gold coins, and he said, "You see, it's real." And Moshe said, "Okay, Ivan, let's put the rock back over this so nobody sees us." And the two of them walked home, and Moshe said, "You know, Hashem, you took care of Ivan very well." And the next morning, Moshe gets up. He knew this was it. He was packing things up for his family. They didn't know where they were going to go or what they were going to do. And as they're leaving their house, walking with the little belongings they had, they see there's a funeral in town. So Moshe says, "Who died?" And they said, "Ivan the drunkard died last night." And Moshe said, "Who?" They said, "Do you remember Ivan? You used to talk with him all the time." Moshe said, "Ivan died last night?" They said, "Yeah, he's right here. We're going to bury him now." And so Moshe turns to his wife and his children, and he says, "Everything's going to be okay. Just stay here. I have to go and watch my friend Ivan be buried." And after the funeral was over, everybody went about their business. And Moshe took his wife and children into the forest, and he said, "I want you to know, my wife and my children, that when I had those guests for Shabbos, I really did it just because I loved Hashem. And I came here in the forest, and I begged Hashem to show me the way and to help me. And I said, Hashem, if you were to ever make me wealthy, we would have hundreds of guests for Shabbos. We'd even make a guest house for people to stay for Shabbos." And then he moved the rock. His wife and his children saw the treasure, and Chanel says, "Moshe, what is this?" He said, "Yesterday when I was sitting in the forest, I came back into town, and I ran into Ivan, and he told me that when the day comes that he leaves this world, he's going to leave me this fortune." And at first I thought he was joking, but here it is. He said, "Hashem has decided to make us wealthy." And a year passed, and in Mezhibuz, the Chassidim couldn't really look at their Rebbe the way that they had before after he had treated Moshe in such a disrespectful way. But one day, Chanel says to Moshe, "You know, the Baal Shem Tov did all this for us in his crazy way, and we never ever went to thank him or give him tzedakah." And Moshe said, "You're right." And now Moshe had a beautiful carriage with 8 horses, and his children were dressed in the finest clothes, and they didn't need milk from an old cow anymore. They packed up beautiful gifts and food and gold coins and went to Mezhibuz to see the Heilige Baal Shem Tov. And when the carriage stopped in front of the house of the Holy Rebbe, the 10 Chassidim who had accompanied the Baal Shem Tov that Shabbos could not believe their eyes. They immediately recognized Moshe. They ran over to him and shook his hand, and they said, "Shalom Aleichem, Moshe, how's it going?" And Moshe said, "You won't believe it, but since I saw you guys, I've become very rich." And they said, "We see, Moshe, but how did it happen?" And he told them the story of Ivan and his davening to Hashem. And he said, "I don't understand it, but obviously that has something to do with the Baal Shem Tov coming and eating everything in the house and making me sell the house. And we came here to thank the Baal Shem Tov." So all the Chassidim went in with Moshe and his family. And when Moshe comes in, the Baal Shem Tov stands up and he says, "Moshe, tell me exactly what happened since the time I left your house." And so Moshe tells him about Ivan and how he'd gone into the forest and davened to Hashem to make him rich. And the Baal Shem Tov interrupts Moshe and he says, "Moshe, don't you see? You were poor, but in heaven they decreed that you should be rich. You only had to ask for it. But you were too humble to ever think of your own needs. And I saw your suffering, and I saw how much good you could bring to the world. And so I came and ate your cow and got you to sell your house in order to force you to cry out to Hashem for what was rightfully yours. And Moshe, nothing could make me happier than seeing you get the reward for your bitachon, for your trust in Hashem, and for what had been waiting for you in heaven all this time." The Baal Shem Tov lifts up a glass. He says, "Everybody, let's say L'chaim." They all say L'chaim.
L'chaim.
To Moshe, who finally asked for what he wanted and got what he deserved. Hi, good Shabbos, good Shabbos, good Shabbos. Hallelujah, la, la, la. I have another story for you. This is one of the classic Shlomo stories. Really, normally I wouldn't want to tell a story that Shlomo tells so well, but I want to put it in the book, so I have to record it. Everybody knows the great tzaddik Reb Nachum of Chernobyl. He was one of the closest Chassidim of the Heilige Baal Shem Tov. And these days, we know Chernobyl because of the nuclear meltdown in the time of the Soviet Union. But in those days, it was a Chassidic town, and the only nuclear energy that was coming out of there was from the holy tzaddikim. One of the things that Reb Nachum would do was go around and collect money for poor brides. One time the Baal Shem Tov told him that he needs 10,000 rubles to marry off poor brides, and that he should go to the town of Barak, because there were wealthy Jews, and he could raise the money. And Barak was one of the biggest cities in Poland, with a large Jewish community, and Reb Nachum hoped that within a short amount of time he could collect the 10,000 rubles. And unfortunately, Reb Nachum was there for 2 weeks. 2 weeks! And he didn't even get 1 penny. No one wanted to give him any money at all. And he was so angry at Hashem, he walked out of the city and sat under a tree. And he says, Ribono shel olam, Master of the world, if I had come to collect money for myself, so I can understand why you wouldn't want to help me. Because who am I? Maybe I don't deserve any money. But those 10 brides, I'll never see them. I don't even know who they are. And the Baal Shem Tov sent me to collect this money. I did this for you, Hashem. I'm not doing this for myself. 2 weeks. 2 weeks and nobody's giving me any money. I don't understand why you don't help me, Hashem. The truth is, you and me, Hashem, we're not in business anymore. I'm going to go back home and I'm never going to collect money for poor brides again. I have my own children to take care of. I have my own life to live. Reb Nachum was angry at Hashem, but he was broken on the inside because he didn't really want to be angry at Hashem. He was just so frustrated he didn't know what to do. And then suddenly in the distance, he sees 2 police walking towards him, and in between them is a little Jewish man with tzitziot and a kippah and a beard. And the policemen have handcuffed themselves to this Jew, and as they get closer, the Jew was dancing and singing and glowing with joy. There was Reb Nachum sitting crying under a tree, watching a Jewish thief who had just been arrested, blowing his mind with joy. And so Reb Nachum couldn't help himself but smile. And he gets up and he goes over to the police and this little thief. And he says, Shalom Aleichem, my dear friend, what's your name? And the thief, he opens his eyes up wide and he says, what, you don't know me? I'm Moshe the Ganev. I'm Moshe the thief, the most famous thief in the entire world. And Reb Nachum said, I apologize, my friend. I'm not from around here, and I've only been here a couple weeks, so I haven't had the merit of meeting you yet. But now, Shalom Aleichem, it's such an honor to meet you. And so the police are about to continue walking with Moshe the Ganev. And Reb Nachum says, listen, Moshe, if you're the most famous thief in the world, how come the police caught you? And Moshe says, that's nothing. Even the best thieves get caught sometimes. Don't pay any attention to it. So Reb Nachum said to him, Moshe, when you get out of prison, I hope you'll stop being a thief. And Moshe started laughing. He said, what's your name? So Reb Nachum says, Nachum? He says, Nachum, do you know what a Jew is all about? Do you know what a Jew is all about? A Jew never stops doing what he started. You want me to stop being a thief? Ha! And with that, the police took Moshe the Ganev away. The whole time he was singing and dancing and blowing his mind with joy. Reb Nachum is sitting there under the tree, and he thought to himself, look at this thief, handcuffed to the policeman. He's joyous when he should be crying. When I bless him to stop being a thief, he says, don't you know what a Jew is all about? A Jew never stops doing what they began. So Reb Nachum went back to Barak with a new motivation to collect the money, and with such joy, the joy that he had learned from a little thief. And within a few days, he collected the 10,000 rubles. And when he returned to the Heilige Baal Shem Tov and handed the Rebbe the money, the Baal Shem Tov looked at him and he said, Nachum, tell me, what does it feel like when you meet Elijah the prophet, Eliyahu Navi, when he's handcuffed to 2 policemen and dressed as a thief? And so Reb Nachum understood that when you feel like you can't go on anymore, Elijah the prophet comes to give you strength. Sometimes he's dressed as a thief, sometimes as a rabbi, sometimes as a policeman. We never really know. My sweetest friends, I bless you, and you bless me back. When you need strength, when you need it most, may Hashem send you the right person to give you the strength you need at the time that you need it. Okay, so one last small story, Be'ezrat Hashem. It was Erev Shabbos, and the Baal Shem Tov found himself without any food or anything he needed for the holy day. And in those days, it wasn't like today where you could go to the supermarket and just buy what you needed. But the Baal Shem Tov remained calm. He knew that somehow the provisions for Shabbos would come. And just at dawn, when the first light was coming over the horizon, Baal Shem Tov went outside and knocked on someone's door. There was no one on the streets. Everyone was still sleeping. And he knocks on the door and he says, "My sweetest friend, I have nothing to eat for Shabbos." And then immediately the Baal Shem Tov turned around and walked away. And the man inside, hearing somebody knocking on his door calling for help, he quickly got dressed and he sees in the distance the Baal Shem Tov is walking away. There's no one else up and no one in the streets. And he was worried maybe something was wrong with the Baal Shem Tov, so he ran after him. And when he finally got to the Baal Shem Tov, he said, "If you really need food for Shabbos, why didn't you wait for me to get up and give you something, which I happily would have done? Why did you just knock on my door and turn around and leave?" And the Baal Shem Tov said, "Each person is born with their designated parnasa, their livelihood. However, when a person transgresses, they have to work harder to get what was decreed for them in heaven. It says, B'ze'at apecha tochal lechem, by the sweat of your brow you shall eat bread. But not everybody has to labor equally to make a livelihood. Some people make money easily, and others have to work much harder." The Baal Shem Tov said, "In my case, I know that I don't have to work very hard for my livelihood, but I have to make some effort, some vessel for it to come. And so that's why I knocked on your door. It didn't matter whether it came through you or not. All I had to do was knock on your door, and I knew that was enough for Hashem to send me the food I would need for Shabbos. And so I turned around and left, knowing that it would come in one way or another." And so the Baal Shem Tov was teaching us that it's true that we have to make an effort in this world, and everybody's effort is unique to them. Some have to travel far and work hard, while others have to just make a small gesture to do their ishtadlut, to make their effort. May we all merit to receive our portion with bitachon, with trust in Hashem, with Emunah, belief in Hashem, and recognize that our job is not to question how Hashem sends us His blessings, but simply to do our part with pure and simple faith. Thank you so much for listening. As always, my sweetest friends, it's really my pleasure and my honor to be telling the stories again. Thank you to all of the supporters of the podcast, each and every one of you. It's thanks to you that I can continue to do this podcast every week. And please make sure to share it with friends that don't know about it yet, and to go back and listen to old episodes if you haven't had a chance. And until next week, my sweetest friends, have a beautiful Shabbos, have a beautiful week, take care of yourselves, and sei gesund.
Ow!